Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers, well, you know them, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We're joined by our great friend Lars Larson, The Lars Larson Show, larslarson.com. Lars, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. How's Monday treating you?
Not bad. You know, usually I have like a whole agenda for you, and I'm trying to figure out where should we begin when we're taking a look at the week from the right side.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can take a look at the fact that they're marking up a bill right now to find Barr, AG Barr, in contempt, which if I were the Attorney General, William Barr, I would wear as a badge of honor. This is ridiculous that they're doing this. And I just think that the Democrats had their hopes pinned so securely to the idea that the Mueller report would show Donald Trump guilty of something, and they were certain that was going to be the result. And the rest of us were equally certain it was not, because we knew what had really gone on. And we knew that this investigation, even early on, let me remind you, about 6 months in, Mueller was working hard, had all those pro-Clinton lawyers working for him. He had millions of our dollars. He ended up spending about $35 million on the investigation. So he was spending about $1.5 million a month during the investigation. And he was providing some updates. And Dianne Feinstein, not a fan of Donald Trump, was on the Chicken Noodle News Network, CNN, not fans of Donald Trump, being interviewed by Wolf Blitzer, not a fan of Donald Trump, who asked Dianne Feinstein, so what have you found that indicates that the president was in some kind of conspiracy with the Russians to change the outcome of the election? And she said, they haven't found anything yet. Now, that was 6 months in. And I remember at the time, folks on the left saying, don't worry, he'll find it. Well, I understand that when the police begin to investigate something, frequently their investigation goes dry for a period of time. In a lot of cases, I've certainly covered them as stories. But if 6 months in you haven't found anything to support your main theory of the case, that is, we believe that X did Y to Z, there, in every investigation, you may develop a theory of the case. This is what happened, this is why it happened, and this is who did the illegal thing. They weren't finding anything. And I said, I don't think there's anything there to be found. If they haven't found anything 6 months in, and this was not coming from a conservative source, this is coming from Dianne Feinstein to Wolf Blitzer on CNN, and she was on the right committees to have access to information behind the scenes that is kept confidential, but it's shared with Congress because Congress has an oversight authority, and they have to know what's going on. So they have select committees is what they call them, where they have a small group of people, members of Congress, who are allowed to be made aware of things that are going on inside of agencies that can't be given out to the general public at that point. They have military intelligence select committees. They have other select committees that can hear this information in chamber, behind closed doors. They weren't seeing anything. So here we are 2 years in, and Mueller finally comes out and says no collusion, no conspiracy on the hacking of DNC emails, and not enough information for him to even propose that there be a charge of obstruction of justice. So the Democrats say, well, we know that if we read the report, we'll be able to find out what's in it. Well, what have they done? The full report, unredacted, is available to certain members of Congress, and two of them have gone, as of last week, two of them had gone to read it. Both of them Republicans. One was Lindsey Graham. Had any of the Democrats said, I want to go down, what you have to do is you go to a room, you check in, you don't bring your cell phone or your notepad or anything else. You're allowed to read the whole report. So it's available to them. Have they availed themselves of that? No, they haven't. Because I think they know the truth is there's nothing there. Now, that isn't just me saying it. I'm saying Robert Mueller says there's nothing there. William Barr says there's nothing there. But the Democrats had pinned all of their hopes to this, knowing that if the Mueller report, I don't think they even stopped to consider the possibility that the Mueller report might actually clear Donald Trump, and effectively it did. Now, a lot's been made of a political comment that was made in the report by Robert Mueller. Now, Mueller was supposed to be apolitical. That's what you expect people to do. There in Boise, if you have a police investigation of somebody, you want it to be apolitical. In other words, the police chief may hate the guy's guts, But if you investigate him, that shouldn't play a role in whether or not you find evidence that a man or a woman has done a crime. You shouldn't say, well, this guy's a dirty dog and we don't like him. Let's find something on him. That you don't want your police chief doing that. Because, believe me, that sword cuts both ways. So you want an apolitical investigation. Mueller threw something political into the report, and not nearly enough has been made of it. And that is, he said, while the report does not exonerate the president, well, no police investigation exonerates. And if you don't believe me, Kevin, get your police chief on the air and say, when you do an investigation and you say someone is accused of something terrible, a murder, a rape, a bad financial crime, and ask them, do you ever come out and announce, we have exonerated so-and-so? They don't. They come out and announce, we've investigated and we've determined that Kevin Miller is not a bank robber. But all they say is, we have determined that there is not the evidence there to bring charges, to even put it in front of a jury. That's the best they do. Well, Mueller decided to throw something political in by saying we did not exonerate him. No investigation exonerates someone. They only find that there is not enough there to bring charges. They may find nothing. They may find a little bit. They may find a certain amount of information. But if they don't find enough to bring charges, it effectively exonerates the person. Because if you say, well, I think Kevin Miller's a bank robber. You say, well, we've investigated Kevin Miller, and we can't find any evidence to say that Kevin Miller ever robbed a bank. Okay. Does that exonerate him? No. It's not the job of law enforcement agencies to exonerate. It is the job to look for evidence, to recommend that charges be brought by the prosecutor, or recommend that they not be brought. And in fact, they didn't seem to have a problem doing exactly that with Hillary Clinton. The Democrats loved the fact that when Comey came out and announced, well, we've looked at Hillary Clinton and no responsible prosecutor would bring charges against her, but they didn't say, well, we haven't exonerated her. They could have said that, except for the fact that it does appear she committed the crimes that she was suspected of, and Comey just carried water for her. But in this case, Mueller did something political, and we shouldn't see law enforcement agencies like the FBI or the DOJ doing that kind of thing. They should not be carrying water for politicians, and he shouldn't be making political statements like that. So when they bring these, and it sounds like they're going to bring a contempt charge against Barr, I think Barr can tell them to go pound sand.
Our great friend Lars Larson joining us. Catch him tonight at 6 p.m. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. You know, Lars, you've been on all the national shows. I don't know if you've ever been on with Erin Burnett, but I caught her last week, and she had somebody on talking about Barr, somebody talking about Mueller, and she just assumed everything and was literally yelling at this guy, saying, yep, well, Barr should have released it. Well, he couldn't release it because it had to be redacted. Well, he did. I mean, it was crazy. In fact, she made Kamala Harris seem moderate, and I'm thinking, how inappropriate that you have a journalist. And Lars, you take your position very seriously as a talk journalist, as someone who covers both sides of the issue and is very fair. And I'm thinking, here's Erin Burnett on CNN, and she was just literally screaming at this guy.
Well, years ago, I was on as a guest, but I mean, that's a 5-minute thing. They bring you on and they ask you about a particular issue, and they usually pair you up with somebody who's coming from the opposite side. I can tell you this from watching CNN, watching Burnett, and watching the questions that she asks. And as you say, I've been a journalist for 44 years. I'm an opinion journalist now, but she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. When I've watched her asking questions, I've thought, well, you're either playing this, from your point of view, which is not what you're supposed to do as a reporter. I never did as a reporter. I never put my opinion in stories. And I tried to ask questions that I was proud that I asked just as tough a question to the people I liked as the people I disliked. And, every reporter is going to find politicians or interview subjects that they like, and then there are others that you're less thrilled with. She shouldn't be playing that game. But you see why she's yelling like this. CNN is dying right now in front of us, and that isn't my assessment. That's the assessment of the numbers. Kevin, you and I are in a numbers game. So is Erin Burnett, and everybody at the Chicken Noodle News Network is in the numbers game. If people don't watch your network, the network can't sell advertising, And if that goes on long enough, your network fails. And CNN has lost, the last number I saw last week was 26% of its audience. And in a lot of ways, an audience for a television network is just like customers for a restaurant. If you have a restaurant in Boise and it loses 20, 30% of its customers because of the way the restaurant or its staff is behaving, and customers just say, I don't want to go there anymore, chances are that restaurant is going to be under new management at some point, and it may be out of business. And I think there's a level of desperation because all of us in journalism make mistakes, okay? All of us. And the business has mistakes inherent in it. And people say, but you can't put those mistakes on the air. You should wait till you're sure. Well, I can tell you this, Kevin. Day one of September the 11th, for example, the big news story everybody's aware of, day one, we knew from the authorities that there was a possibility that 25,000 people had died in the Twin Towers. By about day two or day three, we knew the number was no more than 6,000. And about 6 or 8 months, I can't remember exactly how long, but it was about half a year later, we knew the actual number, pretty close. It was just under 3,000 had died in the Twin Towers. And even still, for literally years after 9/11, the number would be adjusted slightly because they would find another set of human remains. In some cases, they found, as grotesque as it is to say it, pieces of bone on the rooftops of neighboring buildings of people who had died. Now, would your audience have said, well, Kevin, don't tell us a number until you're sure? Well, we were only, close to sure 6 months later. Would your audience accept it if you said there's been a terrorist attack and some people have died, but we can't tell you how many there are, and likely won't even give you a number for at least 6 months? Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, and almost every, you know this too, when there's a shooting, we might hear, in the first hour that 14 people have been shot and 3 have died. And then we find out, no, it's 20 people who've been shot and 6 who've died. And you give the information as you have it. But the idea that you would hold it back until you absolutely know, well, in the case of CNN, you make mistakes like that. And you also know that you will have inaccuracies you have to correct later. What do you do when you're CNN and you've spent 2 years beating on the drum? There was an election. Donald Trump conspired with the Russians. He changed the outcome of the election, and he's guilty of serious high crimes and misdemeanors against the United States of America for which he deserves to be impeached. That was the drum they beat on for 2 years, and all of a sudden, the official report on it, not done by a guy who was a fan of Donald Trump. Robert Mueller was anything but. Not done by a staff that were fans of Donald Trump. Anything but. They were, in fact, many of them fans and contributors to Hillary Clinton. And they come out with a report and say, guess what? It didn't happen. And you've hung your reputation from the standpoint of news on that and the financial success of your network, which has to be a part of every journalism organization. You have to fund it somehow. So if you don't have a rich uncle, you fund it by running advertising. And people either trust you or they don't. Well, look where CNN is now. They have torched their own reputation, and I think there's a level of desperation in Atlanta.
Lars, we can't wait to catch you tonight. The hardest working man in broadcasting. We appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Kevin. Take care now.
Thank you. Lars Larson joining us. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Do want to remind you, our Penny Patrol, we're getting ready to ask you to collect your pennies to help us help the Boise Rescue Mission. What you can do is, if you're a business, if you're a person, start collecting your pennies, and we would love to come to your business and promote your business to promote the Boise Rescue Mission. If you'd like to take part in the Penny Patrol, simply email me, put on the subject line, all caps, Penny Patrol, Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Miller's Mission from May 20th to the 25th, making a difference here in the Treasure Valley. Eric in Kuna, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Eric.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Hey, actually, I just just was listening to Lars. I just want to say Lars Larson is he's a real professional. Actually, it's pretty great. You brought him, or you helped bring him to the radio station. I actually listen to his show, and I like it when he comes on your show. And I just want to kind of add to what he was saying. If you think about that Mueller, now how many of us want to even read the Mueller report? We know that. I mean, luckily it's not a bunch of fake stuff, and it actually came forward after spending how many millions of dollars to come forward after how long? I mean, normal investigations don't take that long. We all know that, but it is good that Mueller being an operative of Clinton, we all know that he knows that Trump ain't messing around. This isn't the thing. He knows that. That's why Mueller is he really he spent all that money, right? I mean, he spent a lot of money. Now none of us. I have no interest in even reading a page of that. Now, what's an interesting read is some WikiLeaks emails of Hillary, Tony Podesta. Now, I've read some of that, and I'll tell you what, man, they are sleazy snakes, all of them. And that is an interesting read. And that Barr guy, he's great. Eating a chicken. That is so awesome. That's symbolic right there, He's eating some chicken. Because they're all chicken, and he's eating them for lunch. You know what I'm saying? That is just awesome.
Sure.
But as far as journalism goes, he is so right. I mean, whatever happened to objective journalism, like Lars is pointing out? I mean, whatever happened to, even if you do got a bias towards somebody or something, I mean, whatever happened to presenting the story without trying to produce, like what's her name? I stopped watching TV quite a while back, and CNN was a joke when I stopped watching it a long time ago, like 8-9 years ago. And I remember that talking head. What a joke, all of them. What's his name? Wolf Blitzer. Mr. thinks he's an important guy. What a joke. Kevin, you blast them all out of the water. Buddy, you, Lars, and, even Glenn Beck, finally Glenn Beck came around after, he realized. Glenn Beck was kind of off the wall a little bit when Trump was winning. You remember that?
I agree, and Beck still is suffering from not being on the Trump train.
Yeah, right. I mean, at least he's walking himself back. He's got a couple of guys on his show as buffers, which make the show interesting, good. But you don't need a couple of buffers next to you, Kevin. You're fine. Right, you don't need a couple of buffers. You got the guys that come on the show. Dave Petso, he's great too. I just want to say Dave Petso is awesome. I almost called his show a couple of times because I was talking to my son about doing something that I never did, is by putting away, a small amount of money. And he jumped on that through who he works for, and they had some pretty good stuff going on. But that's it's a really smart idea. All you 20-something-year-old people out there, putting away like 50 to, however much you put away. I guess if it's 20 a paycheck, great. But I'll tell you what, do it right now. Definitely do it. But back to what we were talking about. I just want to say Dave Petso was really great. His show is awesome, and I really like his psychological perspective that he kind of adds to it that kind of applies to anything.
Sure.
Actually, you can listen to his show and kind of like,
he's almost like a Dr. Phil of
money and get something out of it psychologically. Great show.
Well, hey, thank you, Eric. God bless you. Have a great day, sir.
God bless you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk.
My man.
My wife don't even let me talk that long.
All right, my man. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. You talk, we listen. KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. Back to your phone calls. Let's go to Lee in Nampa with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Lee.
Yeah, good morning. Say, I was off a few minutes to feed the horses, but have you got a call from a pilot yet?
No.
Okay, well, I'm retired, 35 years, 25,000 hours, and I'd like to straighten you out on a couple of things. And you know them. I don't have to tell you. Flying is the absolute safest way to fly any place. And can you imagine the inconvenience of traveling across country 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and how wonderfully convenient it is today? It's the cheapest, safest, most convenient way to travel around the world, and we should be blessed that we have the knowledge to do it safely over and over again. Secondly, my last point is it is so safe that it's probably 100 times safer than going in for day surgery. There's more people die, 100 times more people die in day surgery or hospital surgery ever in airline accidents. People have to put it in perspective and realize what a wonderful thing it is.
It's not wonderful if you're sitting in the middle seat.
You know, you're there in 5 hours. Big deal. You have 5 hours. Think about running the Oregon Trail back in 1860. You had 6 months of being in the middle seat.
All right, Lee. Thank you, brother.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There we have it. Lee giving us the other perspective. Kevin Miller in the morning. Coming up, more of your phone calls. We'll hear from Tea Party Bob and you. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio, your home exclusively for Fox News on the radio. Let's go live to the White House. John Decker joining us this morning. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Well, I think I'm doing better than Michael Cohen.
Yeah, Michael Cohen, off to prison. In fact, he left his Manhattan apartment within the past hour. He's going 70 miles from New York City to Otisville, New York. He'll begin serving a 3-year prison sentence today. Look, it's federal prison. People may say, oh, it's club fed. It's not like Supermax. It's prison, okay? And I wouldn't want to spend one day in prison, and Michael Cohen's going to be spending the next 3 years of his life behind bars.
Well, you think of Michael Cohen spending the next 3 years behind bars. Is he done testifying before Congress?
He is done testifying before Congress. Of course, he had that very public testimony just a few weeks ago that was covered by Fox and pretty much every network. It was pretty compelling. And he will not be testifying before any entity in the near future. All of that testimony is now behind him.
What does this mean for any more of the fallout of the Mueller report? I know people are wondering if the Attorney General is going to come back, if the special prosecutor is going to testify. But Cohen is he's done. Anything to do with the Southern District at all?
Well, that is up to the Southern District of New York. Federal prosecutors are doing their own investigation there. We don't know exactly what it is that they are looking into. Certainly, Mr. Cohen has spoken to federal prosecutors there about a number of things, potential, and I very much emphasize the word potential, insurance fraud, tax fraud, things involving the Trump organization. But whether or not they're through with Mr. Cohen, I do not know for certain. No one knows for certain unless you speak to those federal prosecutors who are in the midst of conducting that investigation.
John Decker joining us, Fox News Radio, live from the White House here, KIDO Talk Radio. The president, I don't know about you, I'm sure you get the notifications. He was tweeting tsunami over the weekend.
Well, he was. He was tweeting quite a bit. He's been tweeting quite a bit today. But one of the things he tweeted that got my attention was that he doesn't want Robert Mueller to testify before Congress, and that puts him at odds with what he previously has said before, number one, and it also puts him at odds with his Attorney General, Bill Barr, who has been asked that very question in two different settings. One, a press conference he had at the Department of Justice, and the other setting being his testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee last week, in which he said, I don't have any problem with Mr. Mueller testifying before Congress. So a date has been put forward, that date being the 15th of May, which is next Wednesday, and we'll see whether that comes off. I think if indeed Robert Mueller ends up testifying before Congress, it is going to be a circus. I don't think we'll ever, in the past, I would say, certainly 10 years, we have never seen a much anticipated hearing like the one we would anticipate seeing with Mr. Mueller testifying before likely the House Judiciary Committee. Kind
of like going back to the days of Ollie North testifying.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That may be going all the way back to, I believe that was 1986 or 1987, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
But in any case, actually it was 1987, summer of 1987. And I know that without even looking it up or Googling it. But that was 1987, going back quite a ways. I think that now, think how much the world has changed since then. Social media, 24-hour cable, it's pretty remarkable, and that's going to get quite a lot of attention, not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
John Decker, we appreciate it. Hope you had a great weekend.
I did. Thanks a lot, Kevin. I hope you did, too.
I did. Take care, sir.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, our great friend John Decker. We go to the pride of New Meadows, Idaho, New Meadows, California. Who knows? Tea Party Bob joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you today?
Well, if it isn't the traveling Wilbury.
The Gem State would like to thank you for your continued support of the Boise Rescue Mission, and like to offer you any help we can in supporting this penny drive for the mission.
Well, thank you. For those of people just tuning in, we're looking for people to be part of our penny patrol. You can email me, Kevin at KIDOTalkRadio.com. We'll have information on the website coming up, but we are collecting pennies.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this minimum wage. I'm not quite sure what organizations are involved in this attempt to raise the minimum wage here in Idaho, but obviously they've not been educated in economic theory or the fact that if you raise the price of wages artificially, you wind up with less people working, not more people working with higher wages. This has been proven time and time again in many of our major cities that have raised the minimum wage politically. There are very few workers in Idaho who are making $7.25 an hour or less for their services. Those wages are entry-level wages, and in most cases, there are very few who stay in those wages as they develop more skills in the workplace. We don't need higher minimum wages in Idaho. What we need is better-paying jobs, which we used to have when we had access to our natural resources like timber and minerals. The federal government took that away from us with their rules and regulations because they control 62% of our land and how we can use it. Basically, we have the federal government telling us that what we can and can't do with almost two-thirds of our land within the state. And they pay a mere pittance of $36 million for that privilege in PILT payments or payment in lieu of taxes, while we give billions in foreign aid to foreign governments. Why is it that we continue to pay these foreign countries the billions, and they keep sending us their unskilled workers across the southern border, but we can't find the money to pay more than $36 million to Idaho for controlling 62% of the state? There's something seriously wrong when we pay the very governments that are sending the people here to take the jobs from our citizens with low wages and restrict our own people from making a decent living from the natural resources in our state. Millions of acres of forest burned every year because the lack of federal controls on clearing the forest and logging. The feds would rather see our timber burned than harvested. We're a natural resource state, and they're slowly turning to a high-tech state, but that's going to take time. The question is, why aren't we as Idahoans fighting for access to the natural resources instead of fighting for higher minimum wages? And how about getting a movement going to return our state back to the powerhouse that it should be economically by giving the people of our state those access to the natural resources? Loggers make $38,000 a year on average, and miners are making over $19 per hour. There's no reason to be sitting here trying to raise a minimum wage higher than $7.25 when the jobs are out there. All we need to do is bring them back. How much experience do you really need to flip a hamburger? There's a lot of experience in learning how to log or learning how to mine. So let's try to change things the proper way instead of this baloney by politically trying to artificially raise wages. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for my time.
The chairman cedes back his time. Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
All right. Pro-Life joining us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Yeah, Tea Party Bob's right about economics and other stuff, too. Government should not be in the business of regulating wage, prices, anything. That's private economics. That's not the proper role of government. So there should not even be any minimum wage.
So there should be no child labor laws.
Well, yeah, you're probably right. People should not put their children at labor, and that should not be tolerated. I mean, that could be a state making those decisions, but that's not a federal.
So you're saying, though, there should be no child minimum labor laws? No. So you could be 6 years old and work.
Well, I mean, my 6-year-olds, they used to work on our farm. I mean, the government didn't come and get them, and they were economically valuable to us. And you can't regulate what rightfully is in the family purview, but families aren't important anymore. I mean, family law means nothing to the government. The government sweeps away everything, decisions that families make. And then I want to say something about the Islamic kids back there at Philadelphia. That's a sign right there that we should not have Islam in America. Islam is only compatible with itself. It cannot be compatible with any other form of government. And it needs to be exiled to its own nations and kept there.
So you're saying because you have a group of kids that the press hasn't covered saying they're going to chop people's heads off for Allah, that is representation of the entire religion?
Well, it is a representation of the entire religion if the entire religion, say half, 50%, 30%, don't like the children saying that. Do they ever speak up? No, they don't. And the reason is because in Islam, if you go against the tenets of Islam, you can be disciplined by Islam. You know, like you could get your head cut off if you were a fake Islam, if you were an Islamic apostate playing like you're Islam. And if you leave Islam, that's a death penalty. It's just totally ridiculous to think that you can be compatible with Islam. We'll find out the hard way, and Europe's finding out the hard way. You just can't deal with them. They have to either give up Islam and say it's an evil religion, it's the devil's religion, part of the devil's religion, or else you have to just be stupid and tolerate it like we do.
Fair enough. Pro-life, the voice of tolerance. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.
See you. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up next, we have the salary, the housing allowance, and a car allowance for the latest public official. The governor, no, but apparently making, 2, 3, maybe even 4 times what the governor makes. Who could that be? We'll tell you next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Senator Marco Rubio knows firsthand there's a crisis when it comes to student loans in America.
You know, when I finished school, I had over $130,000 or $40,000 in student loans, and it was really a burden for a long time.
This week, the Republican senator introduced the Leveraging Opportunities for Americans Now Act, also known as the Loan Act. The bill would eliminate federal student loan interest and replace it with a flat one-time fee paid out over the repayment terms. He lays out an example.
If you take out a $10,000 loan, rather than charging interest that grows over time, there would be a flat fee of about 25% of the size of the loan. So instead of owing $12,500, but that fee doesn't grow. That's what you owe. $10,000 loan costs $12,500, and that's what it's going to cost the whole time.
Boy, if they could only do that with car payments, house payments, and credit card payments, Senator Rubio. More on that in a minute, but first, let's go to the phones. Harvey in Marsing joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Harvey.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am living the dream, and you?
Well, I'm going to mess up your dream.
Uh-oh.
You love Idaho. On the internet, they do a series of shows, and you might have seen them. They're the 10 worst cities and the 10 best cities and the 10 best states and all this. I was looking at one that ranked Homedale as the 4th worst city to live in Idaho, and Marsing as the 3rd. However, their pictures do not match the towns. I mean, they're showing Marsing with smokestack industries, a long beach full of garbage and dead animals. They're showing that old stage stop that's 10 miles out of town. A historic building is being a rundown building. And I showed it to them down at the city hall where I work, and they're just like up in arms. I mean, this is nuts. And I just thought I'd leave you with that.
Well, we love it when you leave us with the nuts. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I wish you'd look that up, sir.
Well, thank you. God bless. We'll get right on it. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Can't always trust what you see on the internet. So The contract for Boise State's new president, we talked a little bit about this before, Marlene Trump, she'll make an annual salary of $425,000. So usually when people make this much, they go, well, if Dr. Trump were head of Micron or someone else, it would be a bargain because she's a CEO. Is the university president really a CEO? And by the way, God bless him, best to him. Everybody else in this town is owned by Boise State, except for this little program here that you happen to listen to called Kevin Miller in the Morning, right? So you're not going to have people saying what we say. $425,000 for a university president? How many professors could you get for that? And since we were talking about the overwhelming student loan debt, since when did it ever pay off to go into academia, right? Incredible benefits. And by the way, speaking of benefits, so Dr. Trump makes $425,000. I believe the governor makes $125,000, but he's not as important, right? She also gets $9,000 a year for a car. And affordable housing is tough to find here in the Treasure Valley. $60,000 a year for housing. Now, look, nothing personal against Dr. Trump. We don't know her. We've heard some things. She's come from a liberal place. But really, whether you're Dr. Trump or the latest person at the University of Idaho, do you really believe that a university president should be paid such excess amount of money? And you couple that with the growing student loan debt. You couple that with Idaho, Idaho State, Lewis and Clark, Boise State, all raising their tuition. You think to yourself, why are they raising their tuition? Well, for benefits and salaries. And look, we're not saying people don't deserve it. But compared to the private sector, well, they chose to go into the learning, and the learning should pay off. Really? Now, when you take a look at online education versus brick and mortar, I'm a fan of brick and mortar. But the online education, you talk about a 1,000% markup there. You're essentially getting something that doesn't cost anything, and they're charging you the same, probably not even at a discount, of what you get if you go to a brick and mortar classroom. This is a great gig. I'd like to say, dare I call it a racket. You know, how about $200,000? How about what the governor makes? How about no one can make more than the governor in this state? The Congress people, $170,000. How many of us would love to make even $50,000 or $75,000 or $100,000 or $150,000? How in the world can any academic institution, which, by the way, what is the mission of the colleges, the universities? Is it to be a gravy train for staff? Or is it to be a source of learning, a source of betterment, a source of knowledge? $425,000 a year, more than Dr. K made. And one could argue, look, Dr. K, he transformed the campus thanks to Gene Blameyer and Chris Peterson, the football coach and the athletic director during the boom time, during the golden age of Boise State football. Dr. Custer did a good job. He made $409,000 maybe. But $99,000 a year for a car, $60,000 for housing. We give the governor a hard time for his housing because we don't have a governor's mansion. But really, $60,000 a year. So you think about this, the next time you're paying your general service fees, the next time you're looking at your kid's tuition, this is what it goes for. And not just Dr. Trump. We're not talking about her personally, but we're talking about the system where you pay people a lot of money. Some of them get a lot of money to teach. Dr. Custer, I believe he's still on staff as a political consultant. Times are good in higher education. But really, the focus of higher education should be teaching kids at an affordable price. We're very happy to be going to CWI this week, where you get that return on your investment. Senator Rubio saying $130,000. That's cheap in student loan debt. And you have people, again, the largest age cohort known as the millennials. They can't buy homes. Why? Too much student loan debt. We're not talking about government intervention. How about common sense intervention? Well, you can't get anybody highfalutin. Do we really need anybody highfalutin? I'm almost choking on my coffee thinking about it. I think you could get somebody pretty good for what you're paying the governor and use that money to give the students a break, to give the parents a break. Speaking of a break, let's give you a traffic break. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. With Kevin Miller in the morning. Don't forget Glenn Beck coming up next. And do want to remind you, Miller's Mission, we are back, America, getting ready for the Penny Patrol. We would love you to help us collect pennies. And we're going to be collecting pennies throughout the entire month of May. And you go, Kevin, I got so many pennies. See, that's the pennies in the studio. Pennies from the studio that I don't know what to do with them. Well, we can tell you where you could put your pennies. Put them to a good cause. Collect them up. Give me an email, kevin@KIDOTalkRadio.com. If you'd like your business to be a Penny Patrol member, we would love for you to do that. We'll come by. We'll shoot a video. We'll pump it up. We'll let everybody know how much you're trying to help our friends at the Boise Rescue Mission. Again, we'll be living at the Walmart, Garrity and Franklin, May 20th through the 25th, collecting pennies from heaven. But we start now. Join us, won't you? More details. Email me, Kevin@KIDOTalkRadio.com. Subject matter, all caps, Penny Patrol. Ray Amaya, great job. Thank you all for listening. Sure do appreciate it. Sean Hannity will take you home. God bless and keep the faith.